This video is about options open to GPs who currently work in the UK but are considering a period of time abroad. If you're planning to spend some time abroad, there are a few considerations to take into account. First of all, whether you're going to be doing any GP work while you're abroad and how long you're planning to go for. Also, whether you plan to come back for any sessions in the UK. And you need to be aware of the different types of re-entry options that are open to you at different stages. You probably will want to keep your options open, and you also need to be aware of the different requirements for the performers list and the GMC register. And the options regarding all this will have to balance up practicing safely, so ensuring that you're safe to continue to work in the UK, with maintaining some flexibility for your return. So let's look at your options in terms of return to practice. If you're going to be away from the NHS for more than 2 years and you're not going to be working as a GP abroad, your only option for return is to go on the induction and refresher scheme route, and this is open to you once you've left the performers list. If you're going to be working abroad as a GP, however, you have an additional route open to you called a portfolio route, and this involves compiling a portfolio very similar to the appraisal portfolio and involves less re-entry assessments and may involve very little or no retraining time in practice. Both of these routes are open to you if you've left the performers list, but you can only use the portfolio route if you've actually been working as a GP abroad. If your break is going to be for less than 2 years, then that's much easier. Assuming you haven't left the performers list, you just return to work and return to practice, and there are no bureaucratic hurdles to this. However, if you're planning to stay away for more than 2 years, there's also the option of maintaining a low volume of NHS work. So you may be based abroad for more than 2 years but returning regularly to do UK-based work. And in this situation, you can continue to keep your options open by using the low volume template for appraisal, which allows you to reflect on the type of work you're doing abroad in the context of UK practice, and to return to continuous UK work whenever you're ready. If you're going to go abroad but are considering keeping up a small volume of UK work, it's worth reading the supporting doctors who undertake a low volume of NHS general practice clinical work guidance. It includes a structured reflective template which you can submit as a quality improvement activity, and this is structured to help you reflect on the overlap in your work abroad with your work in the UK, the breadth of your role outside the UK, how you're integrated with your team and organisation and benchmarking your work, and what peer support you have, how risk is managed, how you carry out your CPD to maintain your competence for UK work, the duration and spread of your work in the UK, and the experience that you've got of UK work. One thing that gives rise to many questions in relation to working abroad is how appraisal will work. So if we consider the normal rhythm of appraisals for somebody working in the UK, if you decide to go abroad mid-year in between 2 appraisals, it's sensible to have a discussion with the RO immediately prior to departure to plan how you will manage your next appraisal. And it may be that it will be agreed that you can miss your next appraisal whilst you're abroad. After all, this would mirror what would happen with a doctor on maternity leave for 1 year. At the end of that first year, you may decide to continue to work abroad, in which case there's the question of what would happen for the second appraisal. And in this situation, again through liaison with the RO, you may decide that it's appropriate for you to have a remote appraisal, a technology assisted appraisal, and it's appropriate to use a specific template to facilitate that discussion to reflect on your work abroad. As you come to the end of the 2 years, there's an important decision to be made, and again it's important to have a discussion with the RO about what you're planning to do when you come to 2 years. At the 2-year point, you will have to decide either whether you're going to remain abroad or whether you want to return either for permanent work or to do a small amount of NHS UK work. the removal from the performers list might happen either through your resignation or removal by NHS England. So let's look at the options at 2 years again in a different way. You can stay on the performers list if you're doing a small volume of NHS work. You'd continue to have an annual appraisal either in the UK or remotely by a technology assisted appraisal, and this would be by agreement with the responsible officer. You would complete a low volume structured reflective template. You could come off the performers list and you would return via the induction and refresher scheme. This involves a knowledge test, potentially a simulated surgery, and a placement in practice for up to 6 months whole-time equivalent. The third option is to come off the performers list, but continuing to work as a GP abroad allows you to re-enter by the portfolio route. You submit a portfolio which reflects the domains of good medical practice, mirroring the portfolio that you put together for an appraisal, and there is no need for re-entry knowledge assessments or formal retraining. During your time abroad, you could access annual informal support from the responsible officer, which would enable you to prepare more easily for the portfolio route. It's important to be aware that in options 2 and 3, where you've come off the performers list and are reapplying, there is significant bureaucracy involved. For example, obtaining a DBS check and occupational health clearance. There may be significant costs because of the delays involved. In order to get the most out of your appraisal, it's worth considering using the template which has been designed specifically for this situation, which is a variation on the low volume structured reflective template, and it includes a number of areas. One is to describe the organisation and team that you work in abroad and how that compares with the UK multidisciplinary structure, explaining to what extent your role abroad is similar to the UK GP role in terms of age groups, whether you work in a clinic and do home visits, do urgent and planned care, and so on. It touches on to what extent you have access to benchmarking data, which allows you to compare your performance to your peers in your setting abroad. So are you able to compare your referral rates and prescribing, for example? In this template, you also describe whether you're keeping up to date with UK-based CPD and to what extent that compares with CPD for your local organisation. You consider whether you have a gatekeeper role in the service that you work in and whether there is a registered list. And finally, reflect on the extent to which your practice abroad mirrors your UK work and the effect it's having on your skill set. So just to go through key points from this presentation, early contact with your responsible officer and their team to discuss plans is really important. And this is because you might want to discuss the timing of a pre-departure appraisal, you may want to discuss deferment of an appraisal in your first year abroad, and you may want to discuss some remote or technology-assisted appraisals whilst abroad. At 2 years, you need to decide whether to come off the performers list or whether you're going to continue doing a low volume of NHS work. After 2 years, if you do come off the performers list, the responsible officer can continue to provide you with annual support in order to facilitate your return via the portfolio route. Do remember to use the structured reflective template for low volume or for international work. Do keep up your UK-based CPD. Think carefully before resigning from the performers list, and please do come back. Please send any feedback about this presentation to me at this email address. Thank you.